The WNBA has always thrived on rivalries, storylines, and the clash between eras. But Sophie Cunningham just cracked open a vault of secrets the league probably wished had stayed buried. When Sophie launched her new podcast under the Volume banner, she wasn't there to play nice or offer cliché locker room answers. No, she came armed with receipts, confessions, and the kind of unfiltered honesty that scorches reputations. Her podcast episode instantly set the internet ablaze because it confirmed what fans of Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever had been screaming into the void for months. Caitlin isn't just facing tough rookie lessons, she's being deliberately targeted by jealous veterans who can't stomach the reality that one young superstar has shifted the balance of power. The so-called rookie wall has been replaced by a brick wall of envy, elbows, and unsportsmanlike schemes. And Sophie dared to spill it all. Think about the audacity here. For months, we heard commentators brushing off Caitlin's struggles as rookie adjustments, critics claiming Fever fans were exaggerating, and rivals gaslighting viewers into believing nothing unusual was happening. Then Sophie Cunningham drops a truth bomb that rattles like thunder across the WNBA landscape. Yes, players actually game plan to rough up Caitlin Clark, not just because she's new, but because she's Caitlin Clark. They wanted to humble her, test her, punish her, and maybe even push her out. Sophie's words turned whispers into undeniable evidence. If Caitlin Clark retired tomorrow, Sophie implied, the league would implode. ESPN's summer programming would look like Swiss cheese with missing blocks of airtime. Meme accounts would wither. Entire fan bases would vanish. That's how central Caitlin already is. And here's the irony. The same players who owe their paycheck boosts and full arenas to Clark's presence are the ones trying to knock her down physically and psychologically. Sophie called out the hypocrisy. When you're the cash cow, the main attraction, and the face plastered across every broadcast promo, you deserve at least the bare minimum of fairness. Instead, Caitlin has been assaulted, elbowed, hip-checked, and body-slammed, while referees act like Stevie Wonder on defense, pretending they don't see anything. Sophie isn't just another teammate defending her star. She's a woman who spent last season with the Phoenix Mercury and now sits in Indiana's locker room. She has first-hand knowledge of what rival teams discussed. She knows the strategies. She heard the snickering about teaching Clark a lesson. And she had the courage to confirm what millions suspected, but the league brushed aside. It wasn't about basketball purity. It wasn't about making rookies tougher. It was about envy. Old guard players who couldn't accept Caitlin as the instant face of the league chose to unite in a strange Mean Girls pact to rough her up. Sophie painted the picture vividly. This wasn't just routine defense. This was demolition work. Imagine plotting inside locker rooms, not about shutting down her jumper with clever schemes, but about literally knocking her around until she got rattled. That's not strategy, that's sabotage. And now it's public, thanks to Sophie's unapologetic honesty. Consider the stakes. Caitlin Clark is not just another rookie guard with potential. She is the WNBA's lifeline, the player whose arrival doubled viewership, spiked merchandise sales, and finally made casual fans tune into Fever vs. Sky on a Tuesday night. People who hadn't watched a full women's game in years were suddenly glued to every broadcast. And why? Because Caitlin Clark is must-see TV. Even when Indiana's roster struggles, even when teammates shoot bricks like cursed by some rim-dwelling goblin, Caitlin makes fans care. Take her away, and the illusion of WNBA momentum crumbles like a sandcastle at high tide. Sophie nailed it. Caitlin isn't a piece of the league. She is the league. That's why the targeting feels so catastrophic. You don't body-check the very engine keeping your train alive. But that's what's happening. Sophie's candor exposed how insecure the WNBA old guard is. Instead of embracing the rising tide, some veterans want to puncture the boat. They don't see Caitlin as the bridge to bigger contracts and brighter spotlights. They see her as a threat to their legacy. They mask their bitterness as toughening her up. But Sophie revealed the mask was always paper thin. And now fans know. The truth is out. Sophie's podcast already cracked 122,000 YouTube views in a single day. That number should terrify the league office. Not because Sophie's wrong, but because she's right. And people are listening. She has charisma, comedic timing, and a refusal to sanitize her words. She calls it like she sees it, and that's magnetic in a league where too many voices play it safe. Sophie described Caitlin as the victim of an orchestrated campaign of extra physicality above and beyond the norm. When Sophie Cunningham spoke up, she didn't just defend Caitlin Clark, she created a new archetype in the WNBA, the unapologetic enforcer who calls out the dirty laundry others want hidden. Sophie's voice is cutting through because it represents what fans have been begging to hear. The WNBA has talent, history, and grit, but it's also dripping in insecurity and jealousy, and Sophie just ripped the veil off. She described how in locker rooms across the league, players literally game planned not to defend Caitlin's skills, but to physically rattle her. They talked about showing her what the W really is, adding something extra to her treatment. That is not hazing, it's vendetta. And Sophie, now sitting in the Fever's locker room, confirmed that she sees it up close in real time. What makes this even wilder is the league's silence. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert keeps dodging the obvious. Referees whistle phantom calls while ignoring flagrant hits, and media outlets tiptoe around naming the problem. Yet, here comes Sophie, dropping grenades with a smirk and turning a podcast episode into a cultural event. Fans aren't stupid. They see Caitlin on every commercial, every ESPN highlight reel, every promo, and then they see her get thrown to the ground mid-game without so much as a whistle. They feel gaslit. Sophie's rant validated that frustration and turned her into a folk hero overnight. Sophie is not some random bench warmer either. She has a reputation as a fighter, a shooter, and a personality larger than life. She can guard stars, hit threes, and in the same breath roast opponents with jokes that sting. That's why when she said outright that Caitlin is the face of the league, fans erupted. Because it's the truth no one wanted to put in print. Sure, there are legends like Diana Taurasi, Aja Wilson, and Sabrina Ionescu, but none of them are driving cultural relevance the way Clark is. Sophie called out the delusion of denying reality, mocking those who claim otherwise as dumb as shit. That kind of unfiltered honesty is rare in sports, and yet it works. Because every fan sees Caitlin as the gravitational center. When she steps on the floor, ratings double, Twitter explodes, and suddenly casual fans care. Sophie's brilliance is recognizing that ignoring this truth is league suicide. If Caitlin left tomorrow, fans would vanish, merchandise sales would nosedive. Casual viewers would flip the channel back to baseball highlights. The ripple effect would be catastrophic. Sophie painted this scenario with brutal clarity, and that's why her words carry weight. Because she isn't just supporting Caitlin, she's warning the WNBA about self-destruction. Now let's talk about what Sophie has become, Caitlin's unofficial bodyguard. She's the one player ready to shove back, to snarl, to take the heat so Clark can focus on buckets. Every superstar in history had that enforcer. Michael Jordan had Charles Oakley. Magic had Rambies. Even in women's hoops history, physical protectors existed, but Sophie is making it mainstream with her voice and her game. The way she defended Caitlin in that infamous Connecticut Sun matchup was a turning point. Fans saw it. They felt the shift. Sophie wasn't just playing defense. She was defending Clark's right to play the game without being assaulted. That loyalty turned her into a cult hero, and she leaned into it with her podcast. Sophie joked about how other teams wanted balloons and party hats if Caitlin ever quit, because so many bitter veterans would secretly celebrate. It was funny, but it was also devastatingly accurate. Caitlin's stardom exposes how fragile the WNBA is. Instead of celebrating the revenue spike and new fans, players resent it. They want her to pay her dues in bruises. Sophie dared to call out that toxicity. That's why fans love her. She's chaos wrapped in loyalty. She's the player who could roast you in a press conference and then hit the game winner in your face 5 minutes later. And now she's turned that same energy into podcast gold. Imagine Sophie as Caitlin's pro wrestling style hype woman. The microphone is her steel chair, and every episode is another smackdown on fake allies and bitter rivals. She's the enforcer. The WNBA didn't know it needed, but now can't live without. The brilliance of this moment is that Sophie has figured out how to merge basketball with entertainment. She's building the buddy cop duo storyline the league desperately needed. Caitlin as the sharpshooting prodigy, Sophie as the sarcastic enforcer. It's drama, it's comedy, it's marketable gold. Fans don't just want basketball. They want characters, heroes, villains, and plotlines. The NBA thrived when rivalries became television sagas. The WNBA now has that chance with Caitlin and Sophie. Together, they are pulling the curtain back and letting fans into the reality show hiding under the basketball. It's Survivor, Caitlin Clark edition, and Sophie is the teammate making sure Clark doesn't get blindside.